Before I begin, a little shameless self-promotion for Meinl. If you like this podcast, there are 50 more just like it. Subscribe to Meinl Radio and don't miss an episode. Also, please give us a rating if you don't mind. That's always helpful too and helps gets the word out to others about the show. Today on Meinl Radio, our guest is Meinl Cymbals artist Gabe Helguera. Gabe is the owner-operator of Drum Beats Online, an extremely popular website for online drum education. Additionally, Gabe is the drummer for two-time Grammy-nominated metal band I Prevail. I first discovered Gabe while I was sitting in the lobby of a car wash about 5 to 6 years ago. While I was waiting for my car, I was going down the rabbit hole of YouTube. My search had something to do with Meinl Cymbals, and one of Gabe's videos popped up. Honestly, at this point, I don't remember if Gabe's video had to do with Meinl or not. I just remember that I appreciated his enthusiasm and honesty in whatever it was he was discussing in his video. You know the old saying that people may not remember what you said, but they'll remember the way that you made them feel? Well, that's how I remember being hipped to Gabe. So I reached out, and not too long thereafter, Gabe visited Meinl USA so we could break some bread together and try out some cymbals. Why no other company had yet chosen to work with this gem of a human being, I had no idea. All I knew was that I liked Gabe very much and wanted him and his invaluable skill sets to be a part of our team. So, here we are, all these years later, and Gabe is still one of a kind. Exceedingly polite and easygoing, a great instructor who's connected with so many folks, and a touring recording drummer that's positively affected thousands of fans and concert goers. It goes without saying that I was really happy to find an excuse to call up Gabe and take an hour or so of his time to chat. And now, onto the podcast. I'd like to welcome everybody into the Meinl Radio Podcast. It's been a while since our last one because it has, and I have no good excuse. But now we're going from, this is the 51st episode, I think. So we're taking it from 51 all the way to 100, and we're starting with you, Gabe Helguera, one of the best dudes around.
Oh my gosh.
Gabe, thank you for being on the show.
Dude, thanks so much for having me. I love your honesty. I love you're just like, yeah, it's just been some time, but we're here now, and I'm stoked to be here too, man.
I mean, I could bullshit everybody, but really what good's it going to do? So, I'm not going to waste people's time, that's for sure.
Dude.
Dude, I just want to launch into some things and ask you some stuff I don't think I've ever really asked you before. Now, we've been working together for... And I'm a terrible artist relations manager, apparently, because I did not bother to look and see when you actually signed with us. But
well, let's see what your gut tells you. I'm curious.
My gut tells me it's been about 5 years.
I think you're exactly correct. I think a little bit over, maybe like 5.5 years.
Wow.
Because it happened like actually right before I joined I Prevail. It was like while we were talking, I was like, oh, by the way, I think I might play for this band now. And you were like, cool, let's get you more cymbals. So it's easy for me to keep that timeline in place. But yeah, man, it's been a good 5.5 years.
Well, the fact that I almost got it, maybe that means I'm not such a bad artist relations manager after all.
You are the best. You are the best of the best, man. Everyone talks about how wonderful you are. And I agree. That's the only reason I said yes to this, because I'm excited to talk to you.
Shucks, man. I appreciate that. So do you try to avoid podcasts?
Yeah, I actually, as soon as I said that, I was like, well, that's not the only reason. No, I really don't try to avoid podcasts. I just am excited to talk to you, and I'm excited to be on this podcast too, because I love Meinl, and I love talking about drums and life.
Nice. Well, so, okay, I got a question I want to ask you. I didn't really need to, but I wanted to read and see some stuff that was out there about you, like what other people have written about you. And so I read about... Well, this one was kind of interesting. I'd never heard this about you. So when you were youngish, 18-ish, that kind of age, you auditioned to be the drummer at a church. And
yes, sir.
You didn't get the gig, and this led you to go back and brush up on your skills. Then you went back and you got the gig after some time. So I'm wondering, how long did it take you to brush up on your skills, and what did you have to work on in particular?
Yeah. So that was a really interesting experience. I mean, pretty amazing experience. Probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because to give you a little bit of background, up until that point, my drumming journey, like drumming it came really naturally to me at first when I was like 12 or 13, to where, by the time I was 13, I was like playing shows all the time with people who were significantly older than me. And you kind of, you keep hearing like, oh my gosh, you've only been playing drums for 1 year. Like, you're amazing. You're a prodigy or whatever. Which, I mean, it's a not good use of the word prodigy. I'll tell you that much. But you hear that at a really young age, and you start to get, you start to internalize it, and you're like, yeah, I guess I just have this gift. And when I try to do something, it works out, and great. And basically that took me up until that point when I was 18, when I was like, I was auditioning for this. It's kind of like a mega church in the area. So, thousands of people, each weekend. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll totally nail this. Like, no problem. And, showed up. It was intense. And they like kind of let me know like within the audition of like, oh yeah, that wasn't great or whatever. So I already kind of felt a little shaken up, but all that to say, didn't get the gig, and they were very direct with me, which I appreciated. They were like, we think you got to work on your timing. We think you need to just work on your like overall pocket and feel, and maybe you can come audition again. So in terms of what I was very fortunate from that time on was I had a buddy who was, maybe 10 years older than me, just farther along, great drummer, just like really solid pocket drummer, who at that point kind of saw like, okay, this kid really wants to do something with this. Like, let me introduce him to some things. Cause at that point I was just playing punk. Like, I was just playing punk rock music, pop punk, Green Day, Blink-182, anything I could get my hands on that was just kind of like punk or pop punk. Like, that's all I was playing. And so then my buddy was like, hey, check out this JoJo Mayer DVD, learn how to play pocket, learn how to play groove. And it was a bit of a process. So it was maybe like 4 months later, I auditioned again, and I actually got it at that point. They probably shouldn't have given it to me, but they gave it to me and kind of continued to mentor me for the next, year or two, which was, it just made a huge difference in my playing. I'm really, really grateful for it. It was a ton of fun. And then, I just played at churches for years. And I almost like consider myself more of a church drummer than anything else now, even though I haven't played in like 5.5 years.
Well, so did they, like when they first denied you from the gig, was there somebody that they picked up and they got this one drummer, and then like, did you come along and take that person's gig?
No, they always have, they have like a rotation of bands at that specific
I
church.
See. Got it.
Yeah. So it's like, I would be on first weekend every month, right? So I'd maybe play once a month or something like that. So there's always people kind of cycling in and out of that.
Now, I Prevail is not, they don't have a foot in the CCM world at all, right? They're just like, there's nothing religious about them?
No, not at all.
Okay, by your laugh, yeah. Okay, so my question is like, what was it a shock for you to go from church drummer guy world into I Prevail world?
Yes and no. I mean, going from playing locally to playing like professionally and like touring globally, like in an instant, that is more of the shock. But throughout my experience of playing at churches, I was always playing with a bunch of different styles of bands. So I would play with, like pop groups, country groups, kind of indie rock groups, stuff like that. So learning to play metal was certainly new for me, but I did listen to it growing up. I had a lot of bands that I really liked listening to. I just never tried to play that style of music until I was auditioning for the I Prevail gig. Learning metal was a shock, and just like going on a tour bus and playing shows every single night, that was a shock too. But in terms of just playing different styles of music, I was relatively used to it.
And when you first auditioned for the church band, you said you were about 18, 19?
Yes, sir. Yeah, 18.
How long ago would this have been?
Okay, so I am 30 now. I just turned 30.
Right, 12 years ago.
Yeah. So everyone Yeah, I'm freaking out about turning 30 if I'm
2000,
honest.
2010. 2010.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So, okay, and if you were into pop punk, I'm kind of trying to do the timeline with the haircut. So did you have an Under Oath haircut at that time?
At 18, no. At 18, I just had regular, I don't know, what's regular? I just had something similar to what I have right now. Under Oath haircut for me was 14, 15, 16.
I knew you had one.
Oh yeah, man. Just super long. Aaron Gillespie's my hero. Under Oath was actually like the band that like got me into listening to heavy music. And I've been fortunate enough to like play some festivals with them and watch them side stage now, which is really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, now what I'm curious about is when you got the gig with I Prevail, there was a sound man from your church that recommended you for it, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Now, do you know, like, were you ever told what he told the guys in I Prevail about you that really sold them on giving you a shot?
Oh, that's such a good question. I've gotten a little bit of a sneak peek behind the curtain, but not enough. You know, I think I think his big things were, he said that I was his favorite drummer that he's ever mixed before. He said that I just hit really hard, and apparently people like that. I think like he knew I was a really good guy. Like I think that's something that was pretty important to them is, you know, we're bringing on someone new who essentially has zero touring experience. Like, is he going to be able to be a good hang and keep up, you know? I know I think they literally had like a pinup board of different drummers that they were looking at, but I actually think I'm the only one they auditioned, which is probably a bad move on their end, but it worked out for me. So I'm cool with it.
No, I'm betting a lot that it worked out for them in the end too. I mean, I would think that like, so Gabe shows up for the I Prevail audition. He completely nails the tunes. He nails the hang. They see that like, here's a guy who has pretty much zero baggage and that we can hang out with. Like at that point, dude, just like, unless there's like just some complete, like, okay, we got to get that guy. And if there's not anybody like that and then they meet you and experience you, I'm sure at that point they're just relieved. They're like, you know what? We don't have to do all this work of going through all these drummers because the right guy is right here in front of our face.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I mean, I think like I actually really think that all my experience, like learning pocket, learning groove, like at the church stuff and the different gigs that I played with, kind of going into the heavy stuff, I actually think it helped differentiate me in a way of, I obviously had to learn how to play the heavy stuff and learn double kick, which was, you know, a process on pretty short notice. But I think the fact that I could, you know, play those grooves that are typically just played so straight and robotic and actually make them feel good, you know, like have good ghost note placement and dynamics. Like I think so many drummers in that genre, or at least like how they are on the record, right? Like there's sometimes just a lack of feel and a lack of dynamics. So I think all the church experience actually really helped me out in that gig, surprisingly.
Now, how many albums have you recorded with the band?
So it's been 2. Yeah. So I joined them like right when they released their first one. So I still toured that full album. But then it's been, the two after that.
And what do you enjoy more, recording albums or touring?
Touring. I'm a performer. I just having the energy, between the band and the audience, is just, you cannot replicate it in any other setting at all. So it's, and I just think because I had done it at such a young age, it just feels like a part of me, you know?
Now, is there like this thing that do you feel incomplete if you're not getting up on stage and letting people experience your art? Or is it more just like, no, I could totally live if I didn't do that, and I could be very happy if I didn't do that, but as long as we're talking about it while I'm there, it's a pretty awesome exchange. Yeah,
it's such a good question because I would think that when I was younger, I would definitely say I would feel this huge void. But then leading up to lockdown, like I was playing, however many hundreds of shows a year. So there was just so much. I was ready for a break. And then, throughout the 2 years basically that I've just had of not playing shows, the question has come across my mind of like, do I need this? Like, is this still something that I need to be performing in front of others? And then we played our first show back a few months ago. And when I played that show, I think I was reminded of like, oh man, it does feel so good to just perform in front of other people. So I thought I was actually leaning the other way of like, no, I don't think I need it. But now I would say, yeah, I think to some degree it's going to have to be a part of my life. Hopefully if forever, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit because what people also know about you is that you are the owner and operator of a killer educational site called Drum Beats Online.
It's true.
And it is true. And so I want to know about your aha moment when you conceived Drum Beats Online in your mind.
Yeah. So basically for me, it was I started to get really frustrated. Like I said, I had played in a lot of bands growing up, and I had started to get really frustrated because all of these bands would break up, or I would notice that I felt that no one was taking it as seriously as me, because truthfully, like from a young age, I was always just like, I want to play music for a living. And that's kind of like my do or die. I didn't go to college because I was like, well, there's no like degree in being like playing in a rock band, there are certainly other drumming degrees that probably would have been helpful, but that's besides the point. Anyway, so I wanted to figure out something where it's like, what can I do as a drummer that is completely within my control, that allows me to still play drums, but doesn't have people quitting on me and the whole thing collapsing. At the time, I had 6 other roommates that I lived with who all happened to be musicians, which was super fun. But one of my roommates, he had a pretty popular ukulele educational website, and he was kind of crushing it. And he was like, dude, you should really do this for the drums. Like, you're a great drummer, and like, I think you would do a great job with this. And after giving it some thought, I initially thought, no way, like other people are doing that. No one really wants to learn from me because I haven't done anything, so who cares? But then I was like, hey, what the heck? I'll give it a shot. So I just started making some videos on my own. I had always grown up like editing videos already. But truthfully, I don't know. When I made my first video, I don't know if I've ever taught an in-person lesson. So I certainly wasn't a good teacher, which is something you have to consider too. But yeah, just started to put out lessons, and the feedback seemed to be good. And then you catch the other bug, which is you actually see students start to make progress from certain lessons that you've taught. And you're like, oh man, it's maybe more fulfilling to actually help other people out than just do my own thing. So that's kind of when I started to fall in love with it and keep building it.
So you found out that you were a teacher and you never even knew you were a teacher.
Yeah, it's so weird. I never thought of myself that way. But yeah, I don't know. I think just like anything, right? Just like drums, if you're the first time you play, it's not going to be good. Like, you can still watch my first videos. They're up. They're not good. They kind of suck, but you just keep plugging away at it, stay consistent with it, see what works, see what doesn't work, keep learning. I think it's just like the relentless pursuit of growth is helpful. So I don't know that I would say like, oh, I was born with this gift of teaching. I just think I kept trying it and figured out what people resonate with. And I'm really grateful because it really is incredibly fulfilling.
So it started out as basically like your buddy encouraging you to get into like a side hustle. And because you had one of the components, the video editing component, you thought, yeah, I mean, I know how to do that much, and I'm a drummer. But was it when you finally sat down at the kit and looked into the camera that you were like, Oh, dude, now I've got to teach them.
Yeah, definitely. And truthfully, it wasn't even a side hustle. Because I had zero hustle at the time. I had no job. I was like unemployed for, I think, like 2 years straight.
Oh, wow.
And so it kind of just allowed me to kind of experiment with that stuff a little bit. What was helpful, he gave me good advice where he was like, what I think you should do is film 3 videos and don't even release them. He's like, just film them and get the experience of what it feels like to be behind the camera or in front of the camera, sorry. And, create a lesson and make the video, and that'll help you get better. And then you just trash those videos, and then the next ones you make are your actual first ones. I actually think I did release the first ones though, but it took the pressure off, which was nice.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, I think that was pretty good advice he gave you. Is he still doing ukulele lessons?
He is. It's ukuleletricks.com.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And how do you handle the business of drum beats online when you're on the road with I Prevail?
Yeah, it's it's evolved over the years for sure. Where when I was first with I Prevail, it was just me, right? So on the road, I would generally I would go to bed before everyone else, and I would get up before everyone else, and that would give me like 3 hours while the bus was still driving, but everyone was sleeping, to just be able to edit videos and, mostly edit videos, honestly, because that's what I was putting out. And then, I think there's just, the touring schedule is weird, and it is different than like a typical schedule, but there is routine to it. So I would just look for those open spots in my day and just kind of start plugging away at that. Now I do thankfully like have a team that helps me with some of that stuff, but it's still kind of the same thing, right? It's like, okay, I have a 2-hour chunk in the morning, maybe a 2-hour chunk in like the early afternoon, a 3-hour chunk like after meet and greet. And yeah, so you just trying to find those times to just kind of sit down and get to it, which is great, because otherwise what would I be doing on the road? I'd just be sitting around playing video games, and I would much rather be helping other people and have more of a sense of purpose and feel like I'm being productive too,
Yeah, no, for sure. And so you basically film a ton of content when you're home, and then you save it all up for when you hit the road, and you just do all your editing and uploading out there.
Exactly. Yep.
And have you ever filmed something at home and realized you didn't do it right, and you're like, well, I can't use that now?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that happens maybe about like 5 to 7% of the videos where it's like, oh shoot, I can't do this, and you scrap it. But then sometimes I'll be able to come up with like, okay, well maybe there's a video I can shoot on the road that's kind of like a behind the scenes video that's still educational, like oh, here's like 10 tips for any touring drummer, and it could be cool because I could film it on the road while I'm actually doing it, So sometimes it forces you to think of different creative ideas that you can do outside of the studio, which is nice.
Now, do you teach drum lessons person to person, or like maybe not Skype, but like Zoom or whatever? Do you do lessons one-on-one with people?
Typically not. I just don't have the time, unfortunately. I have here and there on the road, but no. Normally, I just have to focus on all the lessons that we're putting out because the output is pretty high.
Before I Prevail, when it was literally just you're at home all the time, did you do any one-on-one lessons then?
Yes. Oh yeah. There was a pretty crazy period where I was working construction, and then I would like run home from construction to teach like 4 students, and then I would, as soon as like they were done, I would have to learn songs for the shows that I was playing that weekend. It was like, there was an in-between time there that was pretty nuts, where I was working, I was doing drum beats online, I was teaching in-person lessons, I was playing at church, I was playing with, local artists. I look back at that time really fondly, but yeah, it was pretty wild there for a bit.
Well, interestingly enough, and you made me think about this. So I had the same drum teacher for 12 years straight growing up, and so he schooled me not only on drums but also on life. He would totally set me straight about all kinds of things. So some lessons sometimes were just sitting and talking about big picture stuff. So how much of that have you had to do with your students back then? And were there any recurring themes?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. First of all, it sounds like you had an awesome teacher. That's really cool that you had someone for that long, you know?
Dude, he was straight up Yoda. I mean, he's the he's one of the professors in the percussion department at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and where I grew up. And I started taking lessons with him when I was in the 7th grade, and I took lessons with him up until the time I left and moved out to Los Angeles.
Wow. Dude.
And then in the summers, because we lived about 30 minutes outside of Knoxville, and so in the summers, like when I would go in for my drum lesson, my parents, who were the best parents in the world, they would double up and pay for, instead of a 30-minute lesson, they'd pay for hour lessons in the summer. So I would just go in the summer and spend an hour with them. So at that point, there was really a lot of time to work on both. You could work on whatever you're working on, or if you had some big picture stuff to talk about, you could do that. But yeah, to speak to what you were saying, yeah, best dude of all time. His name's Keith Brown. If anybody ever hears of Keith Brown in Knoxville, Tennessee, I guess you'd call him an older cat. He's probably in his 60s now, but
60 is the new 40.
Yeah, and drumming has kept him so young. I mean, it's crazy. You know, like music does that. It just keeps you young. So,
Man,
yeah.
Keith, you sound like an awesome guy. I want to hang out with you.
Oh yeah, I mean he was in my wedding, all that kind of stuff. So.
Oh, that's awesome too.
But wait, let's get back to what I was asking you about.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I caught the question. So, I think, I really tried to only work with students. I mean, if I had the luxury, I did not always have the luxury, but I tried to only work with students who genuinely loved drumming and genuinely wanted to get better. Because there's so many students who, like, their parents just put them in drum lessons because it's just another thing to do. They do soccer on Tuesdays, they do swimming on Wednesdays, they do drum lessons on Thursdays, and they don't really care about any of it, Those were always my least favorite, which is why it's so amazing, or why I enjoy Drum Beats Online so much, because it's like every one of my students genuinely wants to be there, right? It's their choice. And I just connect so much more with that. So I think for me, when it came to the big picture stuff, kind of the recurring themes was always really just trying to connect with the student and what their actual goals on the kit were. Because again, like you said, you had a great teacher. I had a really great teacher coming up too, who was very, he did not shove things down my throat that I didn't want to learn. He was like, yeah, what do you want to work on? I'm like, I want to work on Blink 182 stuff. He was like, that sounds good to me. And, that really worked out at the time, at least. So yeah, I think the general themes that I would continue to find is just man, if you want to continue to be better at something, just being able to create a weekly habitual routine for yourself that is maintainable is really the only way to continue to make progress. I think you hear so many people who do they have these periods of time in their life. I'm pretty sure I've heard Matt Garska on this podcast where, I think his Berkeley years and maybe even now, it's just oh yeah, we're practicing 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And that's what we're doing for 4 years. And I mean, the rate at which they grow in that amount of time is incredible. Clearly they're amazing. But what I found for me is that I would be okay, I want to practice for 4 hours a day. And then I'd be oh shoot, I don't have 4 hours today, so I guess I won't practice at all. And so I would get really overwhelmed, and then it would lead to me not practicing. But I was hey, if I can actually fit this in with my job, with exercise, with doing all the other things that I want to do in life, I'm just going to continue to get better. But I think sometimes people get overwhelmed by the whole thing. So to go back to it, yeah, the general theme was let's try to build this into your lifestyle, and I think that's going to take you the furthest. At least that's been my experience, and that's what I would tell them at the time. Maybe it was terrible advice, but I don't know.
No, I think it's good advice. I mean, that was the thing when I did the podcast with Garska. I realized this question I was asking them just did not compute with him. It wasn't his fault. It was just that it's not the way he was wired, and it clearly shows it's not the way he was wired, because I mean, he's got his skill set, which is heads and tails above everybody else, most everybody else's, and that's not speaking poorly of everybody else. He's just like, oh my gosh.
There's that 1% of drummers who are just going to be fine sitting on the kit for 10, 12 hours every single day. And they're just, like you said, they're a different breed. And
right. So when I asked him, I was like, hey, I love it too. But I realized in the middle of the question, I was just like, I shouldn't have even asked this question. Because I'm like, dude, what would you tell a guy who's only got an hour to work every day? And he was like, I don't even know what that means. Maybe he looked at me like I had bugs coming out of my ears. And I was like, yeah, okay, that was a dumb question for me to ask you. Well, have you ever had any students stump you with something that's beyond your skill level? And I don't just mean like students that you taught back in the day before you were in I Prevail, but like, I'm guessing you get sometimes requests from your students like, hey, I'd love to know how to work on this. Have you ever just had to look at them or type back to them and go, yeah, that's just not my wheelhouse?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Not that I can think of offhand. I mean, I think I've gotten questions from people who are like, hey, like, are you ever going to start like teaching jazz lessons? And I'm like, no, like I can't play jazz. Like that, I'm the wrong guy. Like if you like what I'm doing now, like I'll keep doing more of that. But if you're looking for me to do like jazz or like make a full switch into like Latin grooves, you got to start talking to Juan Carlito or someone that's not me, because that's not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned Juan, it makes me wonder. So you're pretty familiar with this whole community of drum educators and drum content creators, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and I assume, like, given that you've been to shows like the NAMM show where all these people have been in the same building and hanging out and what have you, I assume you've gotten to know them. So, I mean, from your end, you tell me, like, what's this whole community of online drum educators and content creators like? And is it weird? Is it odd? Does everybody kind of, because it's a business you guys are doing, do you sort of hold back a little bit when you talk about work or like, what's it like? Is it a lot of competition?
Yeah, I mean, so sorry, I'm saying, yeah, that's a good question. It's not a lot of competition. It's the community is incredibly unique and I really love it. I think like it's so awesome to have a group of people who know like kind of exactly the things that you are going through in your day-to-day life, that a lot of other people just don't have that experience, you know? So yeah, I've been very fortunate enough at some of these NAMM shows. We would do, these like drummer houses, be like me, Adam Tumanero, Austin Burcham, Juan Carlito, David Cola, just a lot of insane drummers who are, you know, teaching at a high level, playing at a high level. And it's honestly just so much fun. There's so much connection there, like I said, because we're just in unique circumstances. But no, I really don't feel like anyone holds back or that there's any like competition there. I think like naturally, you know, I experience this in sometimes when I'm in areas where there's a lot of musicians. I think there's some like natural competition, but I personally just don't resonate with it. I didn't like play a lot of sports growing up, so I'm not super competitive. So I think sometimes it might go over my head, but from what I've experienced, it's just been nothing but love and just like, it feels like a big, big family. So yeah, my experience has been like, I really love all those dudes, you know?
I guess it feels like a big therapy session too, because like you said, I mean, you finally get into a room with all these people who know your trials and tribulations because they have the exact same one. So like, you guys can get together and, if you choose, be salty about, you know, maybe the less than awesome customers you have or students or whatever, where you could talk about similar experiences or you could, and maybe you guys all have killer students. So maybe it's like you're just sitting there grousing about like the back end platform of your website or something, you know, nerdy like that.
For sure. Yeah. And I think like we always somehow like, you know, we're able to connect on that stuff too. But what's fun is that because we're able to connect on that stuff, I feel like we're able to like go deeper as well. Like I feel like every time I've gone to NAMM, we end up having like some sort of big group conversation about like like some type of like existential crisis or like our views on the world. And it's really cool. It's fun. But yeah, it always starts with some silly stories on the front end for sure.
Well, you had said that when you started Drum Beats Online that you discovered you kind of worked at being an educator and you discovered that you were good at it, but you did have to work at it. So, and it became something you were passionate about. Now, did you end up becoming a passionate person about the tech side of your site, like the cameras and microphones, lights and mixing and all of that stuff?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's actually insane how many different elements there are that go into just like putting out one drum lesson online. All the different skills that are needed. Not to say that I've mastered all the skills. Like I said, I have people who help me now, which is really, really helpful. But you can go so into the weeds. Yeah, like I've certainly gone into the weeds with different cameras, lenses, camera settings, color temperatures, lights, acoustics, microphones, different effects and transitions for editing. I got super into like color correcting and these different weird effects that you can do within like Final Cut. And then, like creating different like custom tools on the actual like educational platform I've gotten really into too. So to answer your question shortly, yes, I've gotten very into all of those little details for sure.
And like, when you're on, let's just say you're turning I ask a lot of people this because I'm always curious. Let's say you're turning your brain off at one point in the day. You don't want to think about anything. You don't want to think about the band. You don't want to think about the website. Nothing. You just literally want to veg. Well, some people, I don't know, way back in the day, maybe a housewife would have picked up People magazine and read about inane details of some celebrity's life, and that was her way of tuning out. So like nowadays you pick up your phone, you get on Instagram, you've got the things you follow, and I tell everybody this, and probably people who have been listening to the podcast are really tired of hearing me say this, but in order to convey this to you, when I want to turn my brain off, oddly enough, one of the things in the last couple of years that I'll like go just rabbit hole on YouTube with are videos of the like age-old struggle between lions and hyenas. Like, I totally dig it. I mean, dude, it's
that is
brutal.
hilarious, dude.
It's like owls and crows. I mean, they'll kill each other on sight, and it's the same thing with lions and hyenas. And so I turned my brain off by watching this stuff. And so I wonder, like, the same thing about you. Like, what do you do? What do you look at? I mean, is it cameras and microphones and lights, or is it like, I don't know. What is it? What do you turn your brain off with?
I could not imagine just being like, I just want to chill. I'm just going to look at animals killing each other. Like, that's hilarious to me, dude.
I don't know why. I don't even know how I think it was just one day there was some thumbnail on YouTube. I was scrolling and I saw it and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I mean, and there's a lot to it. It's not just like, I'm going to watch this animal rip this other animal's throat out. It's not really that. Or, oh, look, he's eating the ass end out of an ox. It's not really that it's more like it's a thing. It's this thing that's been going on for centuries and centuries. And that fascinates me too. Like, God, why do they hate each other so much? And then there's these people who go out into the field over on the continent of Africa and the game preserves, and they film this stuff, and their production's incredible. So just the fact that they capture it. Anyway, I'm talking way too much about me. I'm wanting to hear about you.
Yeah, sorry. I'm fascinated by that. That would be the thing that would, if I were like, hey, how do I want to like stress myself out right now? It would be to watch those videos for me. That'd be like watching a horror movie for me.
Well, dude, I will say this and I'm going to say one more thing. So like for anybody out there that's laughing about what you just said about being like a horror movie. So there is this one Instagram page that somebody told me about called Nature is Metal. And, oh dude, it's just, it's nuts. Like you'll have a hyena just holding the face of a monkey in its mouth.
Oh,
just the face. Somehow he just ripped off the face, and you're just
Holy.
like, whoa. And the pictures are incredible. They're incredible. But yeah, it's called Nature is Metal. It's fairly brutal.
That is super metal though, so respect. But so I would think for me, I have two modes of wanting to turn my brain off. One is my body needs to be active. to turn my brain off, and the other is just like I'm just chilling. So I would think what I gravitate towards more is the active, because it's like, hey, so for me that would be like skateboarding. It's like you have to just focus on what you're doing, otherwise you're gonna get a face full of concrete. So it allows me to turn off, all the other noise and just work on my varial flips and, getting my kick flips cleaner and stuff like that. So skateboarding is something that I've really gotten back into the past couple years. Oddly enough, I've paired two things that are very different from each other. I've gotten back into skateboarding and I've started to play tennis. So I don't know what's up with that, because I always kind of looked down at tennis, but it's actually super fun. It's really technical. So I think like I gravitate towards these technical things that, just kind of take your full brain to understand. So maybe that's actually the opposite of that question. So on the other side of it, if I'm just looking to chill, like on the couch, I am either just I got really into like movies and just kind of watching like basically most of the new releases that come out like throughout the year. So I try to keep up on my movies as much as I can. So I'm either watching a movie or some type of like dumb comedy, or playing like Super Smash Bros. Online, or like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, or another game called Rocket League. But that generally makes me pretty frustrated and angry after about 10 minutes, and then I'll just kind of turn it off. So...
What, the video games?
Yeah.
Why? Because you suck at them?
No, I guess, I know I talked about not being competitive earlier, but I guess that is definitely where like my competitiveness comes out. Hey, yeah, if I'm winning a bunch, then I'm chilling. Like I'll be there for a while. But if if I'm losing consistently, I can't do it really for more than 20 minutes.
That's funny. I'm trying to picture you throwing a fit, like getting up and leaving the room. It just doesn't compute.
My wife's like, if you're going to play video games, you're not allowed to yell swear words while playing video games. She's like, it's the most like childish thing that you could do. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. I'll try to keep my composure when I'm losing. It's like,
yeah, but dropping F-bombs is so satisfying.
Yeah, but it's like a 30-year-old guy like yelling at a screen who is probably losing to like an 11-year-old kid. So it's just, it's a little embarrassing.
Yeah, no, it's funny though. I can appreciate both sides. Well, okay, so I've got one more question for you, because you just said something that like triggered something in my brain. Now, so like how long have you and your wife been together? Are you guys like high school sweethearts?
We are. We're high school sweethearts. We've been dating for 12 years. No, we started dating when I was 17. So like 13 years. Oh gosh, I can't start throwing numbers like these out because it's just really making me feel old, and I'm just trying to figure that out. But yeah, so we've been dating for like 13 years. We've been married for about 7.5. We got married pretty young, but it's been awesome. We love each other, so that's what it's about.
That helps. I'm high school sweethearts with my wife too. So
amazing. Yeah.
You don't meet too many people like that. But one thing I was gonna ask, and maybe it's like a non-issue at this point, was I was trying to envision you having to explain to your future father-in-law what you do for a living, like when you did drum beats online. And, just how in the hell that translates to somebody that didn't grow up with that kind of thing. So if you're like, yeah, I'm an online educator, online content creator, just blank stare kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Like, tell me how you're going to support my daughter. Oh, yeah. So
I like to hit things really hard.
Drum education. Well, drummer, they can understand at that point. You're just like, you're just that scoundrel musician. But like when you're trying to tell them that you're actually like, yeah, I do this and I upload videos to YouTube. And it just probably doesn't compute with people a bit older.
Yeah.
So you never really had to have that conversation.
Thankfully, no. Yeah. I think, the tough part is that they knew that I just wanted to be a drummer from a young age. And I was, like I said, I was a punk. Like, not only like I listened to punk music, but I was just kind of like, I just like to get into mischief growing up.
You were a bad seed?
No, but yes. So here's how I will explain it. I never ever, like from a young age, I was like, I'm not touching drugs or alcohol. Like that's not what I'm doing. But then when I got into my teenage years, I was like, okay, well, if I'm not doing any of this stuff, I need to be mischievous somehow. So it turned into more of like lighting stuff on fire, breaking stuff, pooping in weird places, that type of stuff. So yeah, I was kind of a punk, and I did horribly in school, that type of stuff. So anyway, that's kind of how they knew me, and they knew I wanted to be a drummer. No one really took it very seriously, but her parents are incredibly understanding and just great people, and yeah, that made it easy, and it made it easy too. That Lane's my wife's name. She always knew that I wanted to be a drummer, so it was never really like this hard conversation or transition of when things started to pick up, because it was like, oh yeah, well this was part of your plan, so now it's just kind of working. I think people are certainly surprised that it worked, but yeah, no, they're very understanding people, which I'm grateful for.
What made you decide at such a young age that you didn't want to do drugs or alcohol?
I think it was, truthfully, like I started like getting into the church scene when I was probably like 12 or 13, and my my brain at the time was like, what does it mean to be someone who goes to church? And I was like, well, you can't do drugs and alcohol. That would be bad. It was like just this, I think, just very elementary understanding of life as a whole. And I would like to think that I've grown a lot since that time. But yeah, for some reason that was just, that was my thing growing up. I don't know.
No, that's cool. I mean, I'm always curious because like at such a young age to make a concrete decision like that, where it's easy to get swayed one way or the other. I mean, that's, or easy to get swayed into experimenting. Like that's, I always find that super interesting. I find it impressive that people can make really solid decisions at a young age.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ultimately grateful for it. Like, the whole church aspect of it is a complex thing for me, more so now. But like, I think that I'm someone, for whatever reason, if I just kind of like say something definitively or like think or believe something definitively, it becomes very hard for me to switch gears. So I think that's, it's certainly a pro and a con. So that was one of those things where I'm like, I'm not doing this. So I just didn't. But then it was also like, I'm going to be a drummer and there's no other options. And it's like, cool, I just stayed doing that. But, that can sometimes, the downside of that is you can just hold on to outdated belief systems or be very rigid in your thinking. So, I try to stay a little bit more open and fluid now as I've grown up a bit. But yeah, so I'm grateful for it ultimately, because if I got really into drugs, I think I probably would have got really into them,
Yeah, for sure. All right, dude, last question, I promise. So does your band give you any grief for skateboarding and the potentials for broken bones?
Yes, 100%. Yep. Because I really kind of picked it up during COVID, it's more of a newer problem now that we're starting to tour again. But I do have a new drum tech, and I have made sure that he knows all the songs. So just in case anything happens, we will be covered there. Ultimately, like, I don't want that to happen, and I try to not do things that are like too crazy that are going to put me like at big risks, but I also still want to do the things that I like, so I'm trying to navigate that, and they're pretty understanding for the most part. They haven't told me that I can't do it yet, but they've definitely given me some grief about it, which is understandable for sure.
I bet the first time you got back on the tour bus and they saw you carrying the skateboard, they were like, what in the world are you doing?
Yeah. Yep. It's ultimately a bad idea, but I really like it. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Awesome.
Dude, I have one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I don't know there's really no context for it. I just thought it would be fun to talk about the first time that we met. So I guess this is me putting you on the spot a little bit, but or just sharing an experience. There was, so for anyone, I don't know about you growing up, Chris, but like, I know for me, like, oh, it's just such a huge goal of mine to get endorsed. I think specifically for cymbals. I think of anything, I'm the most into cymbals. So like having you call me or message me or whatever and be like, hey, like, you know, come down and we'll pick out your cymbals, whatever. I was like, this is like, I gotta make my mark. Like, this is the first time I'm going to meet Chris. This is a big deal. I'm really excited. So like, I come to Nashville, I meet you for the first time. We sit down for dinner and you're immediately like, are you all right, dude? And I'm like, I kind of have like, I ended up getting a migraine and I was trying to play it cool, but I was like, oh yeah, I just kind of have this migraine, but like, I'm going to drink this red wine anyway, which is notoriously like pretty bad for migraines. Long story short, like it resulted in you driving me to the pharmacy to get some Excedrin. And then I immediately went to my hotel and threw up, which I told you about the next day when we got together. So I was just curious, did I totally blow it or what's going on there? Why did you keep me? Cause I was like, dude, this little kid who's like throwing up the first time
you're on the podcast right now. I don't think you've blown it. Like, you know, like there would be like, if this was the first time I talked to you since then yeah, maybe you had blown it, but no, you clearly didn't blow it. I mean, look, so it's someone extremely close to me, one of the closest people to me in my life has chronic migraines and has been living with them for a couple of decades and has tried everything. And it's one of those things where this person has learned to keep a really positive, stiff upper lip and just, this person has done really well. Like, I'm really impressed. I'm super impressed. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I have a lot of empathy through experience. So like the last thing I would have done when you told me you'd had a migraine was just like go, oh my God, dude, come on, a migraine, get it together. Now,
little baby headache.
Right. There's a lot of people in the world who have no clue what a migraine's all about. I mean, I've had one in my life, and I thought I was dying, and I had one, so I know, but like, I've watched what this person's gone through with migraines, and so I have probably, you could not have had a migraine in front of a more empathetic person than me.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Like you literally, like when you told someone I've got a migraine, you told the most understanding person aside from an actual migrainer, like someone who's a chronic migrainer, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I just remember, because I'm like, this is your moment, man. And then like fast forward, like 5 hours later, I'm like walking through CVS with you. And I think you actually bought the Excedrin for me too. And I'm like, I'm a child here who my new artist rep is now buying me Excedrin. Like, this is ridiculous.
Oh, dude. I mean, you know, I really try and blur those lines between like, hi, I'm the artist relations manager. Hi, you're the artist. I mean, yes, the way we came together as people was through a professional function where we agreed to work together. Now, and that always has to, like, for you especially, and for me, that always has to be the final say-so in things that we do when we work together, is it's got to work for both of us professionally. Just because I think you're a rad dude doesn't mean I can do something for you that's not in Meinl's best interest, and vice versa. But all that to say, there still has to be this level of personal interaction that actually means something. So, you know, I'm not, I don't know. I've seen some dudes that phone it in, is my point. And you might find a person or two out there who's going to tell you that I phoned it in with them. Maybe. And maybe I was having a shit day at that point, and who knows. But that's what one thing I really enjoy about this job is when I make connections with people where I actually dig their company and like them as people, such as you, or like when you and Harry Myrie and I went out to have pizza that one day.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like I couldn't have been with two more rad dudes, and it was just fun. And I have to remind myself, like, oh, this is work. Like, I'm working right now. I get paid to do this. Now, of course, I get paid to do a lot of other things for Meinl too, but, I got to make you a happy camper. And it's easy to do that when we get along. So yeah. I don't really know where I'm going with all this other than that, like, I can see why you felt really funny at the time. But now that we're talking about it, like I said, you could not have found a more empathetic person. And you just lucked out.
I mean, dude, truthfully though, like I think I did really luck out, not because of the migraine stuff. Well, that definitely, but just because, like, yeah, man, you are the real deal. Like, I'm so grateful to be able to work with you. Like, everything that you've provided for me and just the genuine friendship has been so incredible. It's made my experience at Meinl so much greater, and it's made me have such a greater appreciation for the company as a whole. I just think, like, Meinl is so innovative, and you guys actually care, and you are such a reflection of that. I feel like you are a very innovative person, and you care so much and so genuinely, and I'm so grateful for that, man. And now that you brought Harry Myrie up, I'm like, we gotta do a podcast with the three of us, man. I love Harry so much. He's the best person on the planet.
Harry is insane, and in the best way possible. But dude, I mean, shucks, man. Thank you very much for those kind words. And like, while we've got this bromance going on publicly in front of everybody, I gotta say that it's right back at you. Like, you're the world's biggest sweetheart, and you're a killer drummer and a killer educator, and you're one of those guys where if we went out and had a beer and didn't talk about anything drum related at all, it would be just as good as if we did talk about drums. In fact, it'd be much better.
Sure. Like, yeah.
And nothing against drums, but
drums are cool. Like, yeah.
Drums are cool. They're round. You hit them. They make
you
noise.
Hit them.
Like,
and
yeah. So, but dude, thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Of course, man. Yeah. I'm very grateful and excited for the next time we can get together, which hopefully should be the fall. I should be in Nashville sometime in the fall on tour if you're around.
Nice. Yeah, nice, man. That's great. And you're a Pearl guy, so John would be here too for you.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, everyone's in Nashville, but we'll make the rounds. But I definitely want to get some time with you for sure.
No. I mean, that's a good thing. I love John. So like, if we all hung at the same time, that's fine with me. Like, I don't mind.
May as well bring in Harry too. Let's do it.
Yeah, why not? He's a Pearl guy also. Yeah, so
it's true.
Dude, Gabe, thank you so much for all this time, man. It's really nice of you to give us your time and sit down and chat and tell everybody about yourself. Thank you.
Of course, man. Yeah, I'm super honored to be here. Super honored to be on the podcast, and it's always such a pleasure talking to you, man.
Awesome. Thanks, bro. Thanks for listening to Meinl Radio. If you liked what you've heard, please remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Give us a rating as well on Apple Podcasts, if that's what you're listening to this on. Also, go to MeinlCymbals.com or go to MeinlStickandBrush.com or go to both of them and sign up for our email newsletters to keep up with everything that's going on in our Meinl world. Thanks. Take care.